Good evening, and welcome to the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. Tonight, we actually have a Dogman encounter from Zachary Stamm. I'm going to let him introduce himself, but I was looking for someone that had a Dogman encounter because if you follow me or follow the show or follow my experience, you would know that what I saw was a canine cryptid. I like to call it a canine cryptid because Dogman just does not sit right with me and it really turns people off. And I know now that back in 2017 when I had my Dogman encounter, it really was a welcome conversation in the Bigfoot community. And I think as the years have gone on, that the Bigfoot community has actually kind of accepted that, that there are other cryptids out there and they're more accepting of the canine cryptid, aka Dogman, for those that like the Dogman. I also have someone that hopefully he will come on the show and he wants to talk about his hellhound experience. So we're going to roll with Zachary Stamm. Zachary, I'm going to let you give your bio because anyone that knows me knows I will slaughter a bio in a heartbeat.
Well, again, Victoria, thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor. Thanks for taking time out to talk to this poor hick from nowhere, USA. And a little bit about myself. I'm 29 years old, and I don't have it on, but I just got married here October 12th. Of all things, I broke my ring at work today. And
Congratulations.
on what, breaking the ring or getting
No, getting
married?
married. Do
Yeah,
not.
and I just got married, and just recently found out that we've got a little girl on the way. We're due April of this next year, and she's takes after both me and her mother. Stubborn like her mother, but ADHD like her daddy. She cannot sit still, and she does not like to have pictures taken care of her because we were at the doctor on Monday, and every time we'd come down with the wand to go and get a picture of her, she'd do this.
That's awesome.
And I just sat there and I just grinned ear to ear, just sitting there. So I'm really looking forward to being a dad and everything. It's a blessing, especially. Um, but yeah, I'm 29 years old, just got married. I've got a daughter on the way. I'm from rural Williamson County, Illinois, originally from Crab Orchard, Illinois. And then this past January, I relocated to Krill Springs, Illinois, which is about maybe 10 or 15 minutes down the road. And I grew up hunting and fishing in the woods of southern Illinois all my life. Raised up by my grandparents and my mother, and my grandpa was the one that taught me everything I know. I grew up uh, doing row crop farming with one side of the family, and then cattle ranching with my mother's side of the family. And agriculture and livestock has been my life. And then at an early age, I was called into ministry. I was dedicated to the church whenever I was a newborn, and I stood in front of a whole church full of people and said, I'm going to sing Southern gospel music one day. And I was 3 or 4. And here I am, 29 years old. And just recently, I got picked up by a local gospel group called Righteous Rain from McLeansboro, Illinois. And I'll be their road manager, their bus driver, their product table manager. You name it, I'll be doing it for them. And on occasion, I do sing with them and everything. I'm a bass singer. Grew up singing with mom and grandma and grandpa as the Sterrick family quartet, and we sang together for years. And they sang together for years before I was even thought of. And they sang all over Southern Illinois. Uh, I work in agriculture as by trade. I'm a retired fourth generation professional wrestler. I had to retire this year because I had a neck injury that kind of put me on the shelf. I've been in cryptozoology now for 19, going on 20 years. I started at a very early age. Whenever I was 9 years old, I had my first encounter with a Bigfoot in Randolph County, Illinois, outside of Redbud, Illinois. And it kind of snowballed from there to where I am now, and I'm an independent filmmaker. Uh, I'm not saying I'm an author of books. I've been featured in several books. I've written columns for magazines. Um, I've done presentations all over Southern Illinois since 2018. Just recently retired from doing the lecture circuit as a traveling speaker on cryptozoology because getting married, having a child on the way, and being in this ministry and everything, my priorities have changed.
Hold right there. That's a lot to take in. Zachary. You've had a lot of life changing events, and I mean that is awesome. And one thing that got you said you sang bass.
hmm
Throw me a tune out there. Give me a sample.
There's a long black train coming down the line, feeding off the souls that are lost and crying. Rails of sin, only evil remains. Watch out, brother, for the long black train.
You have got to be kidding me.
Oh, I surprised myself. We were singing in Shawnee Town a couple weeks ago, and I hit the lowest note ever in my life. We were singing "I'll Fly Away," and it was just me, the baritone, and the tenor singer singing that day. The lead singer couldn't make it, and we were getting ready right to the grand finale, the ending of the song, and the baritone singer starts going like this, and I was going to level it out. And next thing you know, it's just like someone let the floor out from underneath of me, and I crash landed in the basement. And I hit a G1 on the bass scale. That's the lowest I ever went.
Holy cow. You know what, Zachary? I'll Fly Away is my favorite church song.
I'll
That
have
is
to send you the video of us singing. You might get a kid. You'll be surprised when you hear it. I'm not kidding you. After I hit that low note, I think I was the reason they had to buy new sound equipment because their feedback monitor started skipping.
wow. Be careful what you ask for, huh?
Uh huh.
I hope
You
you do
know,
send that. That is my favorite, favorite, favorite.
and
Tell me
I
what.
didn't always start singing bass. I started off. I've been singing Southern gospel music since I was 3 years old. So I've been singing for 26 years, singing Southern gospel music. And I started singing with my grandma in church, and then my mom and my grandma and my grandpa. They sang together as a trio from the 70s all the way up till a couple months before I was born. And they sang from Chicago, Illinois, all the way down into Grand Rivers, Kentucky, and some over in Missouri and Indiana, known as the Sterrett Family Trio. Grandpa sang lead, Mom sang soprano, and Grandma sang alto. And then in 2012, whenever my voice started dropping again and I started singing bass, that's when they brought me in as their bass singer.
Oh, wow. So, wow. That's a lot to take in. I'm still trying to digest that whole everything you. So you have a new daughter on the way. Any names picked out?
Alexandria Darlene Stamm. My middle name, well, one of my middle names, I got two middle names. Somebody asked me what's my middle name. I say, well, which one you want to go? I got two. My middle names are D after my grandfather, Dee, and then Alexander after Alexander the Great. So we took my name and added a little bit to it, and then Darlene is her grandmother's middle name.
I'm going to expect the I'll Fly Away in the email, and I'm also going to expect pictures when she's born, and we're going to call her healthy and blessed.
She's very healthy, and I'll say it's like because we announced it to everybody at our wedding reception, and we had shirts made for everybody in the family, from aunts, uncles, and grandparents, that said promoted to such and such. And I said, we count this baby as a blessing because we were told for a long time we weren't going to be able to have kids.
Wow, that
You
is a
know, she
blessing.
has she has a PCOS, and I was born with strep infection, and that sterilizes people. And 12 different doctors each, 24 doctors total, told us we weren't going to be able to have kids. And well, the Lord had different plans for us.
Isn't that funny how that works out when you have faith and you believe?
Agreed.
So what I didn't realize was you had a Bigfoot experience too.
Yeah, back in whenever I was 9 years old, it was in I want to say August. It was late summer. I know that much because it was during baseball season, and me and my dad were gone to St. Louis for a night game at Busch Stadium, the old Busch Stadium, and we got home that night. We were living. He lived with my grandpa at the time, and I was up there on visitation. And he took me to a ball game. And we come home that night, and we were in the because the way the house is set up, there's a car garage built into the side of the house, and
Mhm.
so you have to go around the back door to go inside the garage to go into the house through the kitchen door. And we were standing inside the garage itself, and Dad's fighting in the dark trying to find his key to put it in the lock. And from outside, and remember, I'm 9 years old, and I remember this like it was happened last night. This thing let out a holler that was so powerful that it was rattling the windows inside the window panes.
Wow.
Yeah, it scared me to death. I about ripped the door off the hinge trying to get in the house. And it wasn't until about 10 years later, and whenever I was 18 or 19, that I actually found a call on YouTube, just surfing the web randomly. I found it that was remotely close to what it was that I actually heard. And I kicked myself out in the roller chair out the office door, and I hollered for my dad to come in there and listen to it. And I played it back, and it was the Ohio moaning call that was recorded in '94.
Wow.
And it
That's
snowballed from there. It started as a mission to find closure with an understanding of what it was that I saw, to a mission to prove that cryptid creatures do exist in southern Illinois. It ain't just in Scotland at Loch Ness. It isn't in the Himalayas mountains or the Pacific Northwest. It's usually going to be right in your backyard or the woods behind your house. It isn't just happening on the other side of the world.
Is there a conflict with your personal spiritual beliefs when it comes to the cryptids?
I believe, that these are God's creatures, and there's some people that'll go and uh, disagree and argue with me. Our pastor, he actually full-heartedly supports me. He says there's plenty of stuff in this world that we don't know nothing about, And I said, you know, you see air, how do you know it's there? Well, you don't, you can't see it. I know, but you feel it. The seeing is believing with a lot of people. Ralph Waldo Emerson quoted it best. Uh, all things I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all things I have not seen.
Wow. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, with my faith and everything, being a Baptist, I go and I run purely on faith. I haven't seen Jesus. I've never touched his nail scarred hands, but I have faith that he did and belief that he did walk this earth 1,994 years ago up to the point he ascended. And archaeologically, they're finding stuff that's related to that, and they're finding, and it's just complete with biology and zoology now and botany. They're discovering new flora and fauna every single day. There was things that was considered cryptid creatures up until the turn of the last century, with the platypus, the panda bear, the giant squid, the gorilla. They thought that those were drunk sailor tales and wild savage tales.
So you think they're flesh and blood,
I do.
creation of God. So when you get to the Dogman, do you view Dogman differently than Sasquatch or Bigfoot?
Well, I have a more formed opinion on Bigfoot than I do Dogman. And because majority of the time, the cases that me and the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters, that's my crew that I have, we were established in 2015. We get more Bigfoot cases than anything in UFO cases, but very seldomly do we get a Dogman report or a Goat Man or a Mothman or a Thunderbird sighting, which is all cases we have investigated in the past. I have a more formed opinion on Bigfoot from reports that I've read and my own personal experiences and experiences that my team members have had. That I kind of developed a character profile for Bigfoot, kind of like how um, with behavioral analysts and law enforcement, they build character profile for perps. That's kind of how I did with my character profile for Sasquatch.
Can we go into that for a moment? Tell me what you concluded and how you approached that, because I find that very interesting. But I also, before I forget, when we start to close out, I want to make sure you get your Facebook and your group out there again. So let's make sure we do that, and maybe one day down the road I can get you all on the show. But when you're looking at the behavior, as you, we haven't even got the Dogman yet, but I mean, you're like Forrest Gump, a box of chocolate. You open it up. Okay. And by the way, I love bubble gum shrimp. And
Oh, I just ate there on our honeymoon down in Gatlinburg, and I love the jambalaya. I recommend it to anybody.
oh, I love jambalaya too.
Just make
Um,
sure you have plenty of Kleenexes when you eat it, though.
I'm gonna tell you something. If my daddy was still alive, I would have him make you some shrimp Creole. You would absolutely love it. My daddy made the best shrimp Creole. And matter of fact, I think half the friends I had that went with me down to the beach to see my dad, I think they just went with me to get daddy's shrimp Creole.
Off subject and everything. Back whenever I was, because you brought up Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump's one of my most favorite movies of all time because I kind of share similarities with Forrest Gump. I identify with him because I'm autistic like he is.
I did not know that.
I have autism spectrum disorder like he does. But people say, "How do you say?" I said, "I'm Forrest Gump light." And but whenever I was in high school, we had speech and research class, and our first assignment was monologue. Guess what monologue I chose?
Oh no, do tell.
The first opening scene of Forrest Gump, and I did it with the accent. I had a bench, I had a box of chocolates, and I did it all verbatim.
Okay, I want to hear. You open the box of chocolate, buddy. Bring it out to me. Wait a minute. Okay. All right.
Hello, my name's Forrest Gump. You want a chocolate? I can eat about 1.5 million of these. My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Those must be comfortable shoes. You can always tell a lot about a person about their shoes. I bet you can walk all day in them shoes and not feel a thing. My mom, I remember if I think real hard about it, I can remember my first pair of shoes. My mama said they would take me anywhere. She said they were my magic shoes.
Zachary, I think I am your number one fan, other than your wife and your future daughter or your daughter.
I'm a walking encyclopedia of movie quotes and useless knowledge, all right.
This has truly been a surprise. I love good people and I love good conversation. I always tell people the person is more important than the encounter or the experience. And I tell you what, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you my favorite movie, whether you want to hear it or not, Zachary. Since I was a little girl, Last of the Dogman. I know it keeps coming up in Bigfoot these days. Don't know who put it out there, but I have always been a Last of a Dogman. I bet you I've watched that movie 30 times since I was a little girl. But I love me some Tom Berenger. And if Tom Berenger is in it, I'm going to watch it. But I've always loved Last of the Dogman. If you ever watch it, the one you got to watch is where the guy's in the background narrating the movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's two different kind. There's one where it's just a movie, and one where there's a narrator that every once in a while pops in. Wonderful movie. Anyway, getting back on subject. When you said you started running a data of information on the behavior of Bigfoot, what did your data lead you to find out?
Well, it's I'll put it out there right now. I am no expert. I don't claim to be one. There's some people that may know a lot more than me. I'm not Jane Goodall. I'm not out there living in amongst them 24/7. But from reports that I've been handed, personal experience, word of mouth testimonies given to me by eyewitnesses, I'm able to go and kind of establish a character profile of what these things are, and purely by speculation and theory. Because I believe they're flesh and blood. I believe that they are an undiscovered great ape. So a
Okay.
lot of this comparison I've based off of, known great apes like chimps, gorillas, orangutans, bonobos, and the like. And I've found, I believe that they are not monogamous, that that they're polygamous, because you look at some of these great apes, like orangutans, chimps, there's always an alpha male, and he has a harem of females that he breeds. I believe there's also a social hierarchy again with you look at great apes, there's a social hierarchy. The strongest eat first and the weakest eat last.
Wow.
Um, I believe that they are omnivorous because there's been reports of Bigfoot, not only feasting on roadkill and, running down deer and stuff like that, but there's also been reports of Bigfoot catching fish, feasting on local fauna, and um, let's see what else did I make that I believe that do have a spoken language or some means of communication. My friend Ron Moorhead, I was just with him here this past September in Mount Vernon, Illinois, at the Illinois Bigfoot Conference. He has the Sierra Sounds. The Squatchers, however, from Hardin County, Illinois, have an audio library of sounds and recordings that I believe rival Ron Moorhead's.
Okay.
And I was the one that they called to verify their library years ago. And I believe that they do have spoken language. Um, whether it's hoots, whoops, howls. You look at other great apes; they have chatter back and forth, and they know exactly what they're saying to each other. How, I don't know, but you also, I believe that they do know that they have their own sign language. Because an example, Coco the gorilla, she knew of ALS, American Sign Language, and she was able to talk with humans and conversate. And she knew something of over 500 words. And I believe that they are more intelligent for such a primitive creature. That I do believe that they are able to use and make tools for hunting or what have you, because you've seen videos. There's actual video footage of orangutans and chimps using spears to fish, makeshift spears. And I also believe that they do build nests to roost in, whether it be on the ground or up in a tree, because you see it again with great apes. They'll go and they'll build nests out of grass or leaves or sticks, particularly the gorilla. So that's kind of my character profile of them.
When you come to nesting and nest, don't to me, I think an ideal nesting place, if you had to be on the ground, would be in the middle of a blackberry patch because it's thick, it's got thorns all around it to give you cover. Do you have an opinion on that?
Honestly, if I spend a night out in the woods and everything, I try to have as much insulation around me as possible, not only for warmth, but from other predators that might be in the area that might try to catch me whenever I'm asleep. So yeah, I believe that they would.
That's awesome. I finally got something right in my life. Let's go to your first Dogman encounter. This happened when you were a kid.
This happened back in 2017, and I was about 22 or 23 at the time. It was
Oh,
July 4th of 2017. Um, to set the scene for you, every year on 4th of July, up until my grandfather's passing this year, we always had a yearly fireworks display, and it would be potluck. We'd invite all the neighbors and all our friends over, and then me and Paul would go out in the field and try not to set the field on fire, setting off fireworks. And our neighbors that had just moved in next door from Wisconsin, they were hanging out with me and my brother, and the mom and dad, they were ready to go home, and they told the boys it was time to go, but they wanted to walk home and spend more time with me and my brother Josh. And I told them, I'm like, don't worry about it. Me and my brother will go and walk them home. They'll be perfectly fine. And they said okay, and we walked them home up the main road. And of course, there's a lot of partying going on, and I stopped and I got a 22 rifle to shoot snakes with, because out where the family ranch is, we had copperheads and some Congos, or otherwise known as water moccasins. We had timber rattlers and the like out there, and you don't want to get tagged by one of them, because you're either getting shipped to Evansville on a helicopter or St. Louis for antivenom. And that stuff ain't cheap neither. You got to pay out of pocket for that in Illinois.
you know
So,
what? Go ahead.
so we get the boys home, and while we were walking there, some idiot, I don't know if he'd been drinking or what, all I know is we ended up taking the ditch so that way he wouldn't run us over going 90 to nothing down our little country road. And we dropped the boys off, and I asked my brother, I said, well, it's just you and me, and we got a full moon. You want to which way you want to go home, because we didn't have nothing to do. I didn't have to work the next day, and my brother was off on summer break. And I said, well, what are we going to do? He goes, well, I ain't walking back on the main road with these idiots out like this. I'm not feeling like taking no more ditches neither. And I said, well, we can cut across the field, and there's this field behind the house that we grew up in that is in a straight line, is the quickest way back to from the neighbor's house where we dropped their sons off at. And I said, okay, we can go down there and go up through the woods and come in behind the house. We'll be home maybe 5-10 minutes. We'll walking. So we started across this field, and we come to the creek, and we're walking down the creek bed, the creek edge of the creek bed, and on each side of the creek there was cane reeds and cattails growing. And I mean, it was thicker than hair on a dog's back. And we're walking along, and I'm hearing something down in the creek knocking over rocks and splashing. And I stopped and I asked my brother, and he was over here on my right side, and the creek was just past him. And I said, are you throwing rocks in there? Are you messing with me? He goes, no. I said, I don't know, maybe I'm hearing things. And we kept on walking, and then I heard something real big splashing in the water. And I said, I'm going to tell you one more time. Are you throwing rocks? No, I don't know what that is. I said, maybe it's a possum. And so we kept on walking, and then I started hearing this panting noise inside of those cattails and cane reeds. And I stopped and put my arm out, and I stopped him. I said, you got your phone with you? Because I left mine at the house. He goes, yeah. I said, give it to me. And he had a little Samsung flip phone that had a little flashlight on it where it was bright enough where you weren't tripping over everything, but you couldn't see 5 foot in front of you. And I grabbed a hold of him by the front of his shirt, and I pulled him back around behind me, and I'm shining that light inside of the cane reeds and cattails, looking around, and I looked in at the ground trying to see down in the water, and you could see the water going, but you couldn't see no eyes down there. I said, well, maybe it's not. And I looked, and I had the phone eye level with me, And right there, looking right at me, was two amber-colored eyes just boring a hole right through us.
Oh my
And
goodness.
bear in mind where we were at in the creek, because I went back a couple of weeks later after it was all blown over and everything. From where we were down in the creek, I stuck a tape measure down the side of the bank. It was 4 foot deep down there in that creek, from the top of the creek bank to the bottom of the creek. And where I was at, I'm 5'9", and this thing was eye level with me. So this thing had to have been at least maybe 9 feet tall.
So you're eye level with it, but not only that, you've got fireworks that had been going off all night. I would say it would have to be pretty agitated. What happened when you made eye contact with it?
Well, my blood ran cold. I mean, literally, I had goosebumps. Felt like my heart dropped down in my stomach, and I'm trying to keep it together because my brother's 13, 14 at the time. He never experienced anything like this. And I said, let's walk back to the road. He goes, why? And I said, don't worry about it. I'll talk to you more about it at the house. Just listen to me. Let's go back to the road. You stay over here on this side of me and keep me between you and the creek. And we started walking at an angle away from this creek, and we got maybe 20 yards away from it because I kept him on ahead of me, but enough where I could look back around because it was full moon that night to where I could actually see if this thing come out of the creek after us. And all the way back to the road, you could just see the tops of those reeds just parting like crazy.
Oh my
And
God.
you could hear something panning back there. And my brother's like, what's that? I said, don't worry about it. Just keep walking. And I told him, I said, let's pick up the pace a little bit. Let's get back to the main road. I said, I'll bet you $5 you can beat me to the house because I'm trying to keep him occupied with this. I'm trying to keep his nerves in check and where he's not freaking out. And
Hmm.
he goes, okay. And I said, all right, I'll race you to the road. And I looked back behind me and I saw a hand come up out of the reeds and come down on the bank. And I saw the head and shoulders of this thing pushing itself up on the bank itself. And I saw a foot come up over the top of the bank. It was climbing out of the bank coming after us. And I said, all right, let's go, 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 go. Let's race. And we took off. And I saw this thing just come up and it tried to stand up and it fell down. And that's when I knew, well, this is our make or break moment. We booked it. And we ran back up to the road and we ran up the hill. I said, there's the house. I'll give you an extra 5 if you can beat me. That's $10. He goes, you're on. He just kept whizzing on. And the whole time I'm running like the devil's after me, which is basically I felt like it was. And I kept gaining on my brother, and I grabbed him by the back of the shirt and started pushing him ahead of me while I had that rifle in my hand. And the whole time I got a 22 caliber rifle. This thing ain't going to do nothing to that thing. It might as well shoot it with a BB gun. If anything, all I got's a club to use on this thing. And we got to the other side of the beam of light. There's a street lamp out in front of the house, and he beat me to the other side of the light, and he stopped and he turned around and goes, well, I beat you. And then he hollered, Zach, look out. And I got to the other side of the light, and this thing stopped right at the other edge of the beam of light, maybe 15 feet away from us.
Oh my goodness.
And it just stood there and looked at us, and I grabbed hold of my brother, and I got him behind me, and I pulled that gun up, and I'm just sitting there like, let's go, buddy. You might take me down, but I'm going to take a piece of you with me. And I told my brother, I said, whatever happens to me, don't look back, run to the house, lock the doors, get mom in the bathroom, lock the door. You keep that shotgun loaded and cocked and ready if anything happens to me. He goes, what is that? I said, I don't know. And then I stared at this thing, and it just keeps eyeballing me, and it's kind of baring its teeth at us, and you can see the chest expanding as that thing is trying to catch its breath. And I hollered at it, and I said, well, come on then. What are you going to do? You want to fight? Let's go. And I guess it didn't like that I was standing up to it because it turned around and walked back down the road. And I watched it until it got out of sight, and it went around to this other street light that was there on the road, maybe 20, 30 yards down the road from the other one. And I watched it, instead of going through the street light, it went around the beam. And as soon as I saw it go over the hill, because I'm holding on to my brother by the shirt because he's trying to bolt already, and I said, "Don't run. If you run, this thing's going to run you and me both down. Just wait
Mm.
it out for a minute." And finally, I saw it go over the hill, and I said, "All right, get to the house." And we went inside, and we shut the doors, started pulling the blinds down and the curtains shut, locking all the windows and all the deadbolts. And I hollered at Josh. I said, "Get in the cabinet, get that shotgun loaded, and give me the 30-aught." And I started throwing rounds in that thing, ready to go. And Josh has got the front door covered. I got the back door covered. And the whole time in between, when we'd go and we'd check them for about 30 seconds, we'd move window to window and door to door. And my mom is like, "What is going on with you boys?" And I told her, I said, "Mom, you ain't going to believe if we told you." And she said, "What did you see? What happened?" I said, "You ain't going to believe me." She goes, "I'm your mother. You could tell me anything." I said, "Mom, we saw a werewolf." And her whole complexion just turned white. And she said, "Sit down. We need to talk." And she told us boys that she had in her lifetime had experiences with what we call, you like you said, you don't prefer to go and call them Dogman. We call them in our crew Lycans,
License.
after a short for lycanthropes. And she said, "I've since I was younger than you boys, I've had experiences with these things." She sat down with us and talked to us for 3 hours, telling us everything that she'd experienced.
Wow. So, I have a friend, and she was actually on the show, so I can say her first name. Her name is Cassidy. And, she was talking to her mom about coming on the show because, she wanted to ask a researcher some questions. And her mom actually told her that she'd seen one of those canine type cryptids. And, she went her whole life and never knew her mom had encountered one. It never come up in topic. And so there is a lot of people out there, and it just goes to show, you're an adult, and you literally see your mom every day, and there is a lot of people that keep those sightings and those experiences to themselves. And so it sounds to me like you've had that, canine cryptid, or lichens as you call them, around your property or in the area. Is generational, do you think?
I believe so. My grandfather passed away in April, and all up till about about 2 weeks before he passed away, he never would admit he did. And then he told me, before he had his stroke on April 11th, that he had experienced these things whenever he was deer hunting. And and even to this day, 5, 6 years later, um, 6, 7 years later, my brother still won't talk about it. It scarred him, and he's 21, going to be 22, and he still won't
Wow.
talk about it.
Can you tell us some of the things your mom experienced or that she shared with you, or is that something you'd rather not go into?
Oh, she won't have a problem with, cause she won't have a problem with me telling. She grew up on the same farm I did, that me and my brother did. My grandparents, they set down roots there back in the late 50s, early 60s, and it's where they'd been all their life, pretty much. And mom had no problem going to sleep in the woods, and she'd lay down in the woods and go to sleep. And she was like maybe 10, 12, 13 years old. And she'd go to sleep in one place and wake up in another place.
Makes
And
sense.
she would find tracks in the woods. She would go and find teepee structures and stick structures in the woods. Um, and this was back in the 60s and the 70s, before this was really, mainstream kind of stuff. And she said that there was one night because my grandparents they tore the old home place down about maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe.
Mhm.
And they built a new one, but the old home place was a used to be a two-room house. And my grandparents slept in one room, my mom slept in the other room. And I think she said she was maybe 14 or 15 at the time. She said she was in high school, early in high school, and her bedroom was where the kitchen was. And she said this creature come up on this porch that they had, and it was just a regular old concrete porch, maybe 5 foot wide to maybe 20 foot long of concrete. And she said that, and it was maybe 8 foot high. And she said this thing, because her bed was set right by the window, and she said she saw this thing come up because there was a street lamp out in front of the house. She said she saw this thing come up um, on the porch and look in her bedroom window, and it actually leaned down, squatted down, and leaned over and looked in her bedroom window. And she was actually able to sketch the face of the creature that she saw. And she said the only thing that she could think of calling it was the old man.
So that would be like the Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd love to pick your mom's brain one day. So, when this thing come out the water and it was running after you, was it on all fours or what? Going back to the dog man now. Was it on all fours or was it on two-legged?
Well, whenever I saw it come up out of the ditch, it was on two legs, but it looked like it was having trouble running on two legs. The whole time I was really glancing back, and I could hear it running behind us in the dark. But it looked like it would kind of go down to all fours, and then come back to all two while it was running, whether it was going uphill or downhill, depending on whether it was bipedal or quadrupedal. Um, Whenever it hit the edge of the light, it was standing on two legs.
You said something that kind of got my opinion or my attention because when I saw what went across the street in front of me, I couldn't tell you if it had hands or paws because I was looking at the teeth. Um, you said hands. Was that an intentional use of words? Was it
Yes.
hands that you saw? Was it like human hands or
From what I could see in the moonlight, because it was dark that night, and
uh,
I saw this thing's hands up in the moonlight, and it had hands like mine, just a whole lot bigger. They looked like catcher's mitt size.
wow. So one thing I don't like to do on my show, I don't like for people to feel like they're interrogation under interrogation. I don't like that. But I'm really interested in the way you would describe your dog man because mine I'm gonna just tell you mine. If I ask that of you, I'm gonna share mine with you. Mine was not like the big bulky thumbnails you see. Mine was like really toned down. It was like a some kind of freak hybrid, but it had biceps and arms like a person. And the closest thing I ever seen to it was last night. One of my friends named Ryan. I was on his Facebook and he had put posted something of it. Looked like a husky on a like a wolf's body, but it had bicep arms, and that would be in a nutshell that's the closest thing I have ever seen to what I saw that night. But the arms had biceps. I've never seen a canine with biceps like a person, and but that's what I saw. Can you just kind of give me a description and you don't have to dig for details. That's not what this is about. I'm just curious what you were able to take in, knowing it was at night, coming out the water, and you're trying to protect your brother.
Well, we got a good look at it whenever we were standing across the beam of the street lamp from it, and because it wouldn't come directly in the light, but from the shine from the light out there into the darkness and everything, we can make out what it looked like and what size it was. It was probably about 8 or 9 foot tall,
Okay.
and it was fairly built. It wasn't like Eddie Hall jacked or anything like an ape or anything. It was maybe roughly around maybe 300 to 400 pounds. Uh, wasn't really built or anything. It had a really big frame to it. Um, Kind of like a blackish, grayish salt and pepper hair, more black than
Sable,
gray,
like a sable.
sort of. And it had the upper body of a human with the arms and the pectorals, the belly. It didn't have abs or anything. It had kind of a pot belly to it. Um, couldn't see if it had a tail or not, which honestly I wasn't too worried about whether it had a tail or not.
Thank you.
Um, the legs looked kind of a cross between a human and a canine. It wasn't like a straight dog leg or a human leg. It looked like a cross between the two.
Like a modified.
And then the head on it kind of resembled if you've ever seen American Werewolf in London. The head on that werewolf, but with a shorter snout.
Like a Nikita snout.
Sort of, yeah, like what we call it pug nose, short snout.
I always describe mine as a Akita snout. It's not quite the German Shepherd, but kind of still like an Akita. That's a pretty amazing description. That and the aggression it was showing was, I mean, was it taking in breath because it was wanting to get you? Was it taking in its breath and trying to catch its breath because it just chased after you?
I, s- you know, I pick up on body language and emotion from, whether it's from animals, because I grew up working with animals all my life, livestock and dogs and stuff like that. I can usually tell if they're scared or if they're just leery or if they're about ready, to, square up and everything. Honestly, I think we might have gotten too close to something that this thing was trying to keep hidden, and it was just running us off. But why it would have kept on going? Honestly, I think the first mistake we made was running from it in the first place because with any kind of predator, whether it be wolves or mountain lions or bears, you don't run from an apex predator because that instigates the chase in
Yeah,
them.
yeah. I
And
was
I think that was our first mistake was running from it.
I was wondering that because at any time it could have caught you. It was almost like it was just trying to put, the fear of God, so to speak, in you, for lack of better words, to get out the
What
area.
I think that if it wanted to get us, it would have. But I think the one reason that it stopped us and because we didn't run straight to the house is because Josh stopped and saw it coming at us, and then I'm the one that turned to face it. It's what I did. Basically, it's like what I would do with any kind of predator animal that I'm trying to stare down. I try to make myself as big and loud as I possibly can to scare it off.
Yeah. So let's go into your second one. How long ago was it between the two
It,
encounters or
it,
experiences?
it was the same year, only a couple months difference. Um, I was on my way home from work. I had to run out of town to pick up groceries and pay bills, and I was on my way home, and I didn't feel like going straight home, so I took the scenic route back through Crab Orchard. And I was going down a road called Shed Church, which is off of Sayreville Road, right outside of Crab Orchard, and they was doing a oh gosh, mine reclamation project out there where they're cleaning up where the gob is and covering it back over with topsoil and logging the area, sort of like that. And I'm just driving down the road. I don't like flying down them roads and everything. I was doing maybe 25, 30 mile an hour, just tooling along, taking my time because the trees were starting to turn, and I was just looking at the trees and everything, looking at the pretty colors. because I may not sound too manly. I'm simple like that. I'm entertained by the simplest things. I'm entertained by a gumball machine, just to be honest with you. But I'm going down the road and I'm just looking around and looking at windows and stuff. And I look up this one four-wheeler trail like I do every time to see if there's any deer up that four-wheeler trail. And as I did, I saw something out of the corner of my eye off to the left side of the trail. And I hit the brakes, throw it in reverse, and I back up and out my driver's side window, maybe 10, 20 yards back up that four-wheeler trail, I see another lichen, and it was down on its knees, and had some kind of animal in its hand that it was eating on. And I saw that thing, and whenever I let off the brakes, my brakes squeaked, and that's whenever it looked up, and I saw its ears go back, and it started baring its teeth at me, and whatever it had in its hands, it dropped, and it stood up and started kind of slowly creeping towards my truck. And it's fairly nice weather, and I had my windows down. This thing could have reached through the window and drug me out through the window. And I just like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm over here trying to feel around and see if I had my pistol in my um, armrest of my truck, and I didn't. Only thing I could do was hit the horn and just lay on that horn as hard as I could and as long as I could. And whenever I did, it stopped and took off, but it took off on all fours.
Wow.
And it was kind of galloping and everything with its front arms.
By the time I would have got back home, I would have been batshit crazy seeing it twice.
I agree. Hey, well, you know, I'm odd because if I experience something, the first time I'm in shock. Second time, yeah,
You're in wonder.
yeah, because perfect example. And the people say, why ain't you got a picture of these things, all these things that you've experienced and seen? Well, I'll give you a perfect example. We were on our honeymoon outside of Pigeon Forge, and we were staying up behind Dollywood at the Enchanted Hills Resort. And we weren't even a mile from our cabin, me and my wife, and we were going into Pigeon Forge to eat supper, and it was our last night. And I'm sitting there just looking out the window, and as we're rounding this bend, she hollers, "Bears!" And I said, "What?" And she goes, "Right there, bears!" Literally, maybe not even 30, 40 feet away from us. I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, that's cool!" Because this was the first time I've ever seen live bears, not in
Yeah.
a zoo. And I find it weird because here a couple months ago we had black bears moving through southern Illinois like crazy. We had one seen not a mile from where my family's ranch is, and they were all around us. And I had to go all the way to southeast Tennessee just to see one. But
Isn't
yeah,
that how it works out?
yeah. But getting back to my story, I was so enthralled by how beautiful these animals were because it was a sow bear and her cub. And I'm like, that is awesome. Wait a minute, I need to get a picture of this. And by the time I got my phone unlocked and hit and scrolled through my apps to find my camera, they'd already gone up the side of the hill.
You want to hear my take on that?
I'm
And
all ears.
I'm a chick, so I have an opinion about everything. If you see me moving around, it's because I'm having a hard time with my back tonight. I don't care what anyone said. I, how do I say this? All right, be nice, Vicky. Be nice. Think of it. Okay, I'll say it this way. I don't have anything to prove to anyone. And I think in this community, we get lost in what other people put on us about where's your proof, where's your video, where's your picture. And you know what I got to say? I ain't got nothing to prove to you. Yeah, I mean, and with all due respect, damn a Bigfoot police. I don't answer to anyone, and excuse my language, but I'm just I get a little annoyed when people say, "Where's the video? Where's the picture?" Where's the audio? Where's the proof? You know, it almost puts us in a position when we're out there experiencing something to miss the whole experience trying to prove that we saw what we're saying we saw, or we experienced what we say we experienced. And you know what I say? I say, I don't have nothing to prove to anyone. I have decided I am going to live in the experience and not worry about whipping my phone out. Or if if I get it on recorder, that's fine. If I get it on the FLIR, that's fine. But I don't have to validate my experience where my beliefs take me on the crypto world. I don't have to validate that to anyone. I don't.
And I
And
agree with you because I'm the same way. You know, I'm the kind of person that I live in the moment. I go and I'm a bad. People tell me, "Well, take plenty of pictures when you go do something." I am bad about not taking pictures and videos, not unless I intend to. You know, and it's like how it was with Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin back here in October of '67. They got lucky. They actually went looking, and they were out there for 2 weeks on horseback camping in the northern part of California around Bluff Creek before they actually got that one on camera. And they had it easy back then. All they had was a camera, and all they had to do was line it up and pull the trigger, and it start recording. With all these things with cell phones, they've got, passcodes, fingerprint scanners, facial recognition that don't work half the time. It takes so much time to unlock all this stuff. And, you know, you're so enthralled in the moment because, like I tell everybody, why ain't I got a picture? Because when you're face to face with something like this, you ain't worried about getting a picture. You're worried about getting out there alive and not being eaten.
I agree, and this is just me on my soapbox. I don't go out to prove they exist. I don't think they need our help. I don't think they need land. They have, I mean, if you ever look down from an airplane at the Earth, there's a lot of land that's not developed there. People, and it's okay for someone not to agree with me. Perfectly fine. I don't go out there. We do put recorders out. We do go out with the flare. But what I find as just as a community in general, we're so busy trying to prove we're seeing what we see that we forget to live in the moment. And we allow people in the community to dictate that to us. Everything's about, did you get it on camera? Are you a serious researcher? But so what? I go out for the experience. I am not a researcher. You know, we put so much pressure on people to prove that they've had an experience that when we go out there, we do not live in the moment because we allow people to almost make us feel guilty for having an experience or to prove that we had an experience, that we are so stuck on our phones that we forget how to live. That is just my opinion. Uh, People don't have to agree with me on that, but that's just what's in my mind. And I don't have to answer to anyone in the Bigfoot community. I don't care if you have 1 million followers and I have one. It doesn't mean you're the Bigfoot police of my world. It may other people, but not my world. It does it. But that's just me. And that's not down in people in the Bigfoot community, but we beat ourselves up. And if I go out and I have an experience and I say I saw something, yeah, you're so welcome not to believe me, but I'm not gonna be intimidated or bullied into not telling my experience. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense.
All right, I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I apologize. That's the Vicky rant.
No, it's okay.
Thank you, Forrest Gump. So you have a
And
third
for
one.
those people, as Forrest Gump says, they stupid is as stupid does.
So you had a third encounter, right?
Yes, this one happened. around May of the next year in 2018.
Same area.
Same area, yeah, literally not even a quarter mile from where I saw had the one that happened the second time. What happened was I got this group of guys that I go fishing with, and we have a ministry called Fishers of Men Ministries, and we'll go fishing and go night fishing. But that's how we all bonded because we loved to fish, and we'll go fishing anywhere from 6 o'clock at night all the way up to the butt crack of dawn the next day, and we have to go to work the next day. We just go out there, not even worried about catching fish. We go out there just to hang out and tell stories and laugh. And we'd wrapped up fishing that night about maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And where it is where we go fishing at is not maybe 4 or 5 miles north of my house where I live with my wife. And I was still living at the family ranch at the time. And I was on my way home from fishing that night. And as I'm coming into Crab Orchard, I'm passing Shed Church Road, the same area that I saw the second one. And I seen a deer maybe 30 yards down the road from me running across the road. So I start throwing on my brakes, and I'm like, man, that's a good sized doe. But man, she's running. She's either got run up straight up out of her bed by something or something's chasing her. Well, sure enough, something was chasing her because right as I got to where she just run across the road, I'm driving an '03 Ford Ranger at the time, completely stock, no lift kit or anything. And a dog man runs out of the tree line and runs across the 2-lane blacktop in about 2 or 3 steps in front of me. I almost clipped it with my front fender. It literally, he about ran right into the driver's side fender of my truck on the
Oh my
front end.
God.
And I hit the brakes, and I see him running across the hood, going in front of the hood, and he high jumped a 12-foot wide water drain ditch that's on the passenger side of the road, and he high jumped that and took off into this field chasing the deer.
Wow. Do you think that all of those sightings was the same dog man?
The second and third one maybe, but this one, the second and the third one were brown colored.
Wow.
Same. I believe that they were the same. The second and the third one I saw was the same one. First one I don't think was the same one because it was a darker black color.
So, from your experiences, all the stories you gather, and I mean, the stories to me are just as important as audio and everything else because you're getting different people all over the world, especially the United States, that have the same like pieces to the puzzle. They don't know each other. So, with all the stories that you've heard, the encounters, the experiences, what you have experienced, what is your conclusion about it all? What is your final thoughts on it?
I believe that people are seeing something that they're saying that they're seeing. There's people, 100 years ago, the Native Americans, they were seeing Bigfoot. And Dr. John, the late Dr. Bindernagel, he said it best. If you look in Native American mythology, the whale exists, the beaver exists, the wolf exists, and the eagle exists. Why can't and so does Bigfoot. All four of those creatures before that exist in today's world. Why can't Bigfoot?
Do you think, I know you have said something to the effect, do you believe that they're like a primate? Is that correct?
Bigfoot, yes, I believe that they are undiscovered great apes.
What do, what would it take to change your mind for you to think they might be tribal or hairy people? Because
Uh,
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not. I'm just right at my point. I'm just all I know is I think they're flesh and blood.
Well, I know that they're flesh and blood because this could be for another episode. I could talk about Bigfoot all night. From my experiences with Bigfoot, they are flesh and blood because I have actually had some up close and personal encounters with them in the past. Some of them were actually physical touch, hands on type deal. Not saying one tried to wrestle with me, but there was sometimes that I think they were doing more of the touching than I was.
Wow.
And it ranges from one tried to drag me off in a tent, one trying to run through my camp and hit me in my hammock underneath a rain tarp, and it launched me out of the hammock. And then one that one time crashed into my grandfather's old side by side, and it tipped the side by side up on two wheels on one side and rolled me out the driver's side door.
Wow, was that with you were with your grandfather then?
No, I wasn't with my grandfather then.
Wow. So
My
yeah, I would love to.
grandfather my grandfather talking about him now that she brought him back up, it reminded me of one of the encounters he told me about that he told me about 2 weeks before he passed away. He told me that because he always rode around with a rifle during hay season to shoot coyotes with because we had cattle, and he said he was out doing windrows one day in his tractor, and he said that he saw a dog man chasing his cattle, and
Wow.
he put the tractor in park, and he stepped out with his rifle out of the cab of the truck and shot at the dog man.
Wow.
He didn't go into great detail. I wish he would have, but he told me, he says, I've shot at these things before, and it's enough that it scared the bejesus out of my brother that whenever it comes to Bigfoot and Dogman, my brother is so traumatized by it. He is pro kill. He's what I call the modern day Rene Dahinden because Rene Dahinden was pro kill for these kind of creatures to prove they exist. My brother said won't go in the woods without a rifle or a shotgun because he says if I see one, I'll shoot one on sight. Me, I'm a complete opposite. I'll only kill in self defense.
So you've got Bigfoot and Dogman or the canine cryptids sharing the same lands, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
That's very telling.
Well, I mean, the county that we live in is called Bloody Williamson for a reason. There's a lot of bloodshed from, Prohibition with Charlie Burger and the Shelton Gang and the Burger Gang. The only American aerial bombing in American history that happened on U.S. soil was literally not even 5 miles down the road from where our family's ranch is, and that's when the Sheltons flew over the Shady Rest, which was Charlie Berger's hideout, and they bombed it from a biplane with a Coke bottle full of nitroglycerin wrapped up, and it had sticks of dynamite wrapped up around it, and it went up like a Roman candle. My great grandmother was a mile down the road from when it blew up, and she said it lit up the night sky so bright you could find a sewing needle laying in your yard.
Oh my goodness. What a history.
Yeah, I mean there was the Heron massacre where there was a bunch of union workers that killed a bunch of scabs that took over at the mines whenever they went on strike, and they took all the scabs out and they killed them. And
Wait a
then there
minute.
was
Talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old scab.
scab workers, people that come in and take the jobs of union workers that's already got the job.
Gotcha. Wow. So they did what?
The union workers went on strike at the mines and around Heron, and they went and they said, well, there's got to be coal still moving out of here. And so a bunch of scab workers come in, and those union workers that were on strike took the scabs out, they crossed the picket line and killed them.
Oh my God.
And there was almost 150 people that died that night. And
So there.
they buried them in a mass grave, unmarked grave, right outside of Heron.
How long did it take that to come to light that they did that? That's very interesting.
It happened back in the 20s during Prohibition. And even today, Heron, Illinois, they try to sweep it under the rug. And literally, there was this old woman that was a child when this happened because she lived right there in Heron, and she remembered where they buried all the scab workers in the unmarked grave because people have been trying to find this for years. And Heron, town administrators and town government were trying to sweep it under the rug because it was a tarnish on the town's name. She goes, well, these people these archaeologists they're looking in the wrong place. They need to be looking over here behind the airport because that's where the grave's at. And the mayor of the town said, I wish that old bat didn't say that word. He called her a real dirty name. He said, I wish that old bleep would go and keep her mouth shut and mind her own business. And sure enough, they went up there on that hill behind the airport, Marion Airport, Veterans Airport, and they found the grave. And there was over
Oh,
100 skeletons in the grave.
could you imagine being their family?
Well, I mean, it gets worse. There was the Klan Wars whenever the Klan took over out here, and there was cops dying. There was local government dying, being killed by the Sheltons and the Klan, and the Burger Gang and the Sheltons and the Burgers ran the Klan, Escalin Young and the Klan out of Williamson County, Illinois. And Orr Shelton actually found Escalin Young in St. Louis with two of his bodyguards, and the last words that was said was, "Don't go for the gun," or and Orr pulled out a gun. He killed Escalin Young and the two bodyguards, and they had filled him full of holes before they died. And so four
Wow.
people died on the streets of St. Louis over the gang war. Orr followed them all the way to St. Louis.
So you're a history buff.
I'm a local historian.
That is awesome. That, I mean, we could do a show in itself onto that because we were talking the other night. Land has energy. Land
hmm
has energy, and energy attracts stuff. Do you
I
think
mean,
that?
just a little less than an hour away from where I live now is the Crenshaw house. Old man Crenshaw, he was notorious for running the reverse Underground Railroad. And they actually found in his house, in his basement and his attic, they found devices of torture that was used to torture the slaves that were trying to make it to Canada. He would get them, torture them, and then send them back south.
So they thought they were getting their freedom. They thought that he was going to help them. What a, can I say douchebag on YouTube?
I don't know. I think with the algorithm, it's only about maybe in the first 30 seconds or something, unless it gets demonetized. I might be wrong.
I could not imagine fighting for your freedom and thinking you have found somebody that's going to help you and give you that and have to go through that.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
just, that's crazy.
Southern
So I think,
Illinois. Southern Illinois is a weird place to live. I'll say that much. It ain't just Bigfoot and Dogman around here. We've got UFOs. We've got serpents. We've got
wait,
witches'
wait, wait, wait,
covens.
wait, 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 wait. You don't get just to say throw serpents out there and just think you're going to move on. Serpents. What do you mean serpents? Like a
The
cryptid
stump,
serpent?
yes, the stump pond serpent and the horn serpent.
Like a
And
snake?
that's, yeah.
Oh, shit.
And they
No.
said I didn't know about it until I read it in a book called Cryptids of Illinois, and it was somewhere up around Decatur, Illinois, I think it is, which is about 5.5 hours north of here. There was a local legend that there was this giant snake that lived in a cemetery, and you would find the burrows of this thing around the headstones in the cemetery.
Oh,
And they said the thing fed on the souls of the damned.
there's some dark stuff out there. Do you do that paranormal investigation stuff?
Yeah, I'm the only, far to my knowledge, I'm the only Baptist exorcist that there is.
Oh my God. You know, I used to do that, like the ghost hunt and stuff. And then when my dad passed, I stopped and I was like, I wouldn't want anyone trying to contact my dad, especially watching what he went through at the end of his life. I'd want him to stay in peace, and I've never done it since.
I
You
mean,
know,
there's my own family's got a dark history too because I had a great aunt that was a witch. My
we've
grandpa's
had.
sister-in-law.
Don't tell me they ran her out of town or burned her at stake.
No, but
That
when she died, her feet were hotter than fire. She knew where she was going. She was
wow.
an evil woman. She literally, the day when she died and the family went in there to clean out the house, they found her satanic Bible, pentagram, her altar, her black candles, and her voodoo dolls, and a bunch of chicken and cow bones in the attic.
Oh my goodness.
She was an evil woman. And it
Oh
was
my
bad
god.
enough. It was bad enough that when she died, she was in the hospital and she was screaming. You know, people that are right with the Lord, they don't go
They're,
screaming.
they have peace. They have
They
a
go peacefully like my grandfather did. But she was screaming and kicking and throwing a fit and having a fit in the hospital. And a bunch of the nurses, they came in there and they put their hands on her ankles to keep her from kicking. And they pulled their hands away and they had burn marks on their hands. She knew where
uh,
she was going.
there's some crazy stuff in this world, Zachary. Some
Yes,
crazy.
ma'am. I agree.
You better stay prayed up, buddy. I mean,
Yes.
I've seen what people do to people. Hmm. That's just what I've seen. I just what goes on the other side. I've seen enough and dealt with enough. I'm cool. I'm cool. I'll stick with Dogman and Bigfoot and Lizard Man and UFOs and because I'm from North Carolina, but right across the line we had the Lizard Man back in I think it was the '80s. Lizard Man
Mm-hmm.
that made national TV and
70s, 80s, the lizard man escape or swamp.
yeah, when I was a waitress at Shawnee's, we would get off work like at weekends we would leave about 11 or 12 from work. We'd go across to the South Carolina line and we would look for Lizard Man. We'd still be in our Shawnee uniforms. And I weren't even really into cryptids. It was just something that made the newspaper. So one thing that I did notice, your grandfather died in April, and your baby girl is going to come into the world in April. Coincidence?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I caught that.
Yeah, it's weird and everything. Call it weird or everything, but you know, the same year that I met my wife was 2020. I met her in August, and in February of that year, my dog that I had for 15 years passed away.
Oh,
And my grandfather passed away in April. I got married in October, and I've got a baby girl on the way this next April. I believe, you know, it's the Lord making room in my life for something greater because I was devoted to that man. He taught me everything I know, took me to church, helped lead me to Jesus. He taught me how to be an honest and upright human being, always give an honest day's work, and he always said, be honest and good to your fellow man, but don't let him walk on you.
that's good
And
advice.
whenever he died, you know, he got diagnosed with prostate cancer this past January, and he did 20 rounds of radiation treatment for it. And good news was after 20 rounds, it nuked the prostate cancer. But he was in the hospital, and they did some CT scans, and they sent him back in to see his oncologist. His prostate was clear, but it was everywhere else in his body that was just ate up with cancer. And they said it had to have been there for 5 or 6 years. They've gotten so bad, and he was hurting in his shoulder and his hip for a long time, and he just attributed it to being age and everything because he was 84 years old. He was a retired mine worker, a farmer. His body, that's all he knew was the word go, and he'd run himself into the ground, and he just attributed it to getting old. But for the years leading up, 2 years leading up to it, he says, I ain't going to be here much longer. And the Tuesday before he died, my wife come in to say her goodbyes. We weren't married at the time, and on April 11th, he had a really massive stroke to where it paralyzed him, and he couldn't hardly talk. But he pointed at me, and he said, "You take care of her, And then he pointed at her and he said, "You keep him in line." He said, "If you want to see me again, you're going to have to stay the straight and narrow." And then the night before he passed away, I was sitting up with him, and he started to do that death rattle, and he started to cough really bad because the fluids were building up in his lungs, and he couldn't talk. And they told me, don't cry around him; it makes him really upset. And he always said, "Mourn me when I'm gone, not while I'm still here." And I couldn't handle it no more, and I got down by his bed and I started praying really hard. I said, "Lord, he's been a faithful servant to you all of his life. He did it by the book. It's his time to go home, Father." And my grandpa couldn't talk, but he could move that one arm. He reached down and started patting me on the back of the head while I was scrawling my eyes out, praying. And then the next day, he was gone. And then the day of his funeral, me and my brother preached his funeral. And
Mm.
they said you got 5 minutes. I said I've got one chance to immortalize this man. I'm going to do it right the first time. And I said, how it says in the Bible, it says, "Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you." You could cut that last part of that verse off whenever it comes to my grandpa, because he didn't care if you liked him or not. He just wanted to do for others. And he never had his hand out for anything, never for money or anything. But if he ever had his hand out, he usually had something in it for somebody else. That's just how it was. He always said, "Be good to everybody." And he never had a whole lot of money, but if somebody needed money, he'd give it to them. And, there'd be times I told him, "You don't have to pay me, Pop." And then I'd go and he'd somehow slip a $20 bill in my pocket. And I'd argue with him and argue with him and argue with him. We were cut from the same cloth. We were stubborn and we would fuss and feud like cats. But I mean, that man was, if you've ever heard Paul Harvey's "So God Made a Farmer," that was my grandpa. And I read that at his funeral. But he was a real prankster, too. His senior year in high school, he never said he had anything to do with it, but he said somehow the outhouse got on top of the high school. And then my granddaddy was a real prankster, but he was a staunch Christian. He never bent to the world for nothing. And he was married to my grandmother for 65 years, and I've never seen a man more devoted to a woman than my grandpa was to my grandmother. The day 2 days before he passed away, she was sitting there next to the bed, and she's saying, "You see angels, D?" And he shook his head. He started pointing around, and he pointed right at my grandma, and she goes, "What do you see, D? You see an angel?" He goes, "No, I see a beautiful woman."
Oh man, they don't make them like that anymore.
And then 3 days before he passed away, he was pointing out angels, and he said he was seeing his mom and his dad. And his dad died in '61. Whenever he was 21 years old, whenever my grandpa was 21 years old, he lost his dad. And then in '97 is when his mom passed away, and he outlived all of his brothers. He said he was seeing his mom and his dad and his brothers in the room, and angels in the room. 2 days before he passed away, I seen what his good eye was looking out the window, and he raised his eyebrow, and I was sitting there with him, and I said, "What do you see, Paul?" And he said, "I see him." I said, "What do you mean, Pop?" He goes, "I see Jesus. He's coming down the road." And I said, "Where is he?" He said, "He's close by, but he ain't too far off." I said, "Where is he?" He said, "He's walking up the road." And then the day before he passed away, he was pointing at the foot of his bed. I said, "What is it, Pop?" He goes, "The master's in the room." If that don't make a believer out of you, I don't know what does. And then I'll tell you how much of an impact he had on people. The night of his visitation, there was about maybe 600 people that came through that procession in 4 hours. And the age difference was 10 years old to 96 years old.
Wow. You know what? They don't make them like that anymore. I don't like. Oh boy, you
And
done
then,
brought the emotions out
and
on
then
me.
the night before his funeral, me and my brother had to preach his funeral. he visited me in my sleep. And I walked in that old home place there at the farm, and he was sitting there at the head of the kitchen table in his chair. But he had his jet black hair again. It was like the last time I saw him healthy. He had his jet black hair again. And I said, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "Sit down. I got something to tell you." He said, "I hadn't been in heaven yet 5 seconds, and now he put me together fixing stuff because he was the local fix-it man for everybody." And he said, "Everything that I've seen in the last 5 days ain't a drop in the bucket to all the other things they want to show me." But he said, "I'm on my lunch break, and I just wanted to stop by and see, make sure you guys were okay."
Wow.
And he said, "You're the man now. Take care of everything." And I said, "Okay, Paul." Then he got up and walked out the door.
Did that bring you some peace?
It did. I still miss the old man every day. It still makes me cry talking about him. But, he's still with me. Whenever I got married, I wore his cufflinks. I had his handkerchief in my back pocket, and I was wearing his cowboy boots whenever I got married. No,
That
never, ever, never. There'll never be a person I don't tell them about Franklin D. Sterrick, my grandpa, because they don't make them like that no more. He impacted
no,
a lot of people.
they were cut out of a different cloth then, weren't they?
Yep.
Wow.
Sorry
Normally
for
at the
sorry for squalling.
look, I was right there with you until you told me what he did with the outhouse. Then I kind of leveled off because I had to laugh at that one. I don't know
Oh,
how
he
you
was
did.
he was he was a real prankster and everything. He there he worked in the mines and everything, and he did everything to everybody. He greased people. He put Limburger cheese in a guy's work hat that used to sweat so profusely underground, and he would get hot like a furnace. And he looked at my grandpa and he said, "Dad, I don't know what you did to me, but I'll give you a week's salary just to show you tell me what you did." And Grandpa pulled his hat off and he rolled that dried Limburger out underneath his hat, put it back on his head. He goes, "Dad, I ought to kill you." And
I'm gonna tell you what.
that man's the reason I'm paranoid, eh? If somebody's around me and I'm looking over my shoulder at him, it ain't because I ain't worried about what they're going to do to me. It's because that man made me paranoid because he was no stranger to me being underneath something, underneath a car or truck changing the oil or anything. He'd get in the cabin, lay on the horn, and blow my eardrums
Oh
out.
my God.
Or I'd be sitting on a stool working on something on the floor, and he'd come around with a handful of grease and
Traumatized.
smear it across my face.
He
His
traumatized you, buddy.
his favorite thing was to pick up snakes and swing them around his head and chase people with them.
Mm. Let me tell you, I had a friend I grew up with. His name's Andy. Andy ended up being a state highway patrol, and he got his helicopter license like for the state and stuff. And every time it used to flood, he'd jump in them flood waters and grab rattlesnakes and water moccasins, and he'd just hold them. I was like, that fool's going to die. He's going to die. He survived the snakes in the streets, so he's retired now. Oh my God. Uh, I've enjoyed. I'm glad you shared that about your grandfather because it's a part of who you are, and it's part of your story because he was a part of the land, and I boy, they don't make them like that anymore. And it's a piece of
uh,
history.
not only that, the bad thing is I act just like him, and I look just like him too. You look at me now, you're looking at the younger version of my grandpa.
Oh my goodness, there's two of them in the world. So at the end of the show, I usually say, you know, you can pay tribute to who you want. I think you paid tribute to your grandfather. So let me ask you this. While we sign off, do you want to sing a verse of I'll Fly Away for your grandfather?
Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.